The fraud charges, all accounting to around 93 million rand, is the accusation of the corruption at Transnet. We've just mentioned the names of the former CEO and former CFO as well. Granted bail of 50,000 rand as well. But we're told there's going to be more arrests. Well, let's bring into the conversation now Executive Director for Corruption Watch, Karam Sing, joining us here on the South African Morning. Karam, good morning to you. Appreciate your time so early on a Tuesday. First reaction when the news broke yesterday morning. What did you think at first?
Good morning, Gareth. Thanks so much for having me on the program, and good morning to all of your viewers. Yeah, absolutely. I think when we first heard the news yesterday, it was, I wouldn't say something to rejoice about. The fight against corruption is a painful one, but following the years of hearings at the Zondo Commission and the various revelations that we've had for over a decade in the media around the looting that was taking place at state-owned enterprises and particularly at Transnet, I think we expected to see some type of accountability flow from these revelations. And I think the decisions by the NPA and the work of the ID to enroll these cases is encouraging. One would expect that the NPA would not have been in a position to initiate the prosecutions and enroll these cases if they didn't feel that they had a strong and winnable case. So from our perspective, it's an important and vital development.
It certainly is, and we're hearing, Karam, as well, that there are going to be more prominent arrests, we are hearing. What are your birds telling you? What are you hearing with your ear to the ground about possible arrest? How high up is the expectation from Corruption Watch on arrests?
Well, I think it would be a dangerous territory for us to speculate, but certainly the implications from the spokesperson at the ID was that we would see more senior persons, possibly politicians who are linked to these events, are now coming into the dock. What we've seen so far have been some of the officials at Transnet. Across the board, we saw a series of arrests previously of the heads of regiment and people involved with Trillion. So I think we can only imagine that it'll be other potentially high-profile persons.
And what do you say to the critics? Because as we all know, social media is a toxic environment, but it is what I always say is a nice litmus test just to see what some people in South Africa are seeing. I'm not suggesting everyone in South Africa is on social media, but some are saying, great, we're going to have arrests, we're going to get bail granted, a couple of court appearances, and this is going to vanish. What about the convictions? What's the expectation there, knowing how long these complicated corruption court cases can drag on for?
These cases could take some time. We know that there's a high bar for the prosecution. We have the presumption of innocence in our constitution. We have a system whereby you need to prove your criminal case beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a big deal. The accused could face heavy, long jail sentences. So it's quite significant, and I think the public's going to have to brace themselves for these trials to potentially be drawn out. But I don't think there's the so-called Stalingrad strategy is going to be available in a way that these accused are not going to be in a situation where they're going to be in a situation where they're going to be forced to plead. And I think the trials will conclude, and we will see a judgment either by the way of people being incarcerated or somehow getting off on these charges. But I think that the public's going to have to brace themselves that these trials may take some time.
I think it's something we're all used to in South Africa as well. Let's move away from South Africa, talk about Dubai for a moment as well, and ask the question that the elephant in the room would be asking. When do you expect the name of the Guptas, the Gupta family, to be dropped into all of this? Because while we're focusing on specialized crime courts, former CEOs, former CEOs, the name that so many South Africans want to hear and obviously would like to see in court is that of the Guptas. What's the hopefulness on that?
Well, I mean, as far as we understand, the Gupta, two of the Gupta brothers at least have been arrested in relationship to charges in the Estina Dairy matter, and that the process of extradition is ongoing. We haven't heard much from the NPA on that recently, so again, we're in the realm of speculation. But, if we look at if we go through the Zondo report, we know that the state capture process has the Gupta's imprint all over it. And one should also say former President Jacob Zuma. And one would expect to see at some stages new charges leveled against former President Jacob Zuma for his role in state capture. So these are the kingpins, these are the big fish that masterminded the state capture process. So one would expect to see additional charges brought against the Gupta brothers. As to whether they'll ever be extradited and face their day in court in South Africa, that still remains to be seen.
It certainly does. So it's the big fish and big, thick fishing lines and hooks as well. But they're in the water. Could this be the end of grand-scale corruption in South Africa? We certainly hope. For the arrest of former Transnet executives being widely welcomed. Also, Executive Director Karam Sing from Corruption Watch joining us this